East Chicago. East Chicago is a city in Lake County, Indiana, United States. The population was 26,370 at the 2020 census. Centered around heavy industry, the city is home to the Indiana Harbor and Ship Canal, an artificial freshwater harbor characterized by industrial and manufacturing activity. Situated along Lake Michigan, East Chicago is about 18 miles or 29 kilometers from downtown Chicago and just west of Gary, Indiana. History, founding, and early settlement. The land that became East Chicago was originally swampland, unsuitable for farming. The state of Indiana began selling off plots of land to railroads and speculators after 1851 to fund the local school system. Settlement of the area was very slow at first, and as late as the 1890s, the city had no proper streets or public utilities. East Chicago was incorporated as a city in 1893. The city was named from its location east of Chicago, Illinois. Industrial growth. The 1900 census gives a total population of just 3,411, but the arrival of inland steel in 1903 transformed the city into an industrial powerhouse. The city's population skyrocketed to over 24,000 by 1910, powered by immigration from all over Europe and the United States, and quickly became the most industrialized city in the United States, with over 80% of the city's land zoned for heavy industry. Inland steel dominated the city's economy through the 1990s and expanded its massive integrated mill at Indiana Harbor multiple times through the 1980s. From 60,000 tons of steel capacity in 1903, it expanded to over 600,000 tons by 1914 and reached 1 million in 1917 and eventually peaked at 8.6 million tons in 1978. By 1907, East Chicago boasted a navigable waterway link to Lake Michigan and to the Grand Calumet River. The Indiana Harbor Ship Canal. Steel mills, petroleum refineries, construction firms, and chemical factories operated at Indiana Harbor and along its intercanal system. Republic Steel, Youngstown Steel, LaSalle Steel, and U.S. Steel all eventually had steel-making operations in the city. During World War I, East Chicago was nicknamed the Arsenal of America, not to be confused with Detroit's label as the Arsenal of Democracy during World War II and the Workshop of America. A rivalry developed between Indiana Harbor, the east side home of inland steel and most working class families, and East Chicago's west side, the residential enclave of the native-born business community. Locals spoke of the Twin City to describe spatial, residential, and class divisions at the heart of the town's identity. The Twin City moniker remains to this day. World War I to the present. During the 1910s, several thousand Mexicans immigrated to East Chicago to work in the mills during the labor shortage of 1917 through 1918 due to U.S. participation in World War I, and also acted as strike breakers during labor unrest in 1919. Most were single men who eventually hoped to return to Mexico, but many stayed on and eventually were joined by their families. The small Mexican community was targeted for voluntary and forced repatriation during the 1930s and 1950s. 1,800 were deported in 1932 alone, but those who remained eventually paved the way for later Latino immigration after 1965. Black Americans also began to arrive in the 1910s and 1920s as part of the first wave of the Great Migration, and this continued from the 1940s to 1960s. According to a city demographic survey in 1959, there were 1,000 Mexican families and 10,000 African American families, along with 3,000 Polish families. There were also a large number of families that identified as Puerto Rican, Romanian, Serbian, Italian, Lithuanian, and Croatian. Like neighboring Gary, Indiana, East Chicago quickly developed a reputation as a rough industrial city plagued by extreme pollution, ethnic and racial tensions, organized crime, illegal gambling in clubs, political corruption, prostitution, and other vices. The city continued to rapidly grow in the 1910s and 1920s, and the population peaked in 1960 at 57,669. However, East Chicago's population began to decline in the 1960s as suburbanization, white flight, affordability of automobiles, and the construction of highways meant that workers no longer had to live in the city but could commute from less polluted suburbs. It was the steel crisis of the 1974 through 1986 period that completely devastated East Chicago, as it did other industrial cities like Gary, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, and the south side of Chicago. East Chicago's population plunged to 47,000 in 1970, 34,000 by 1990, and 29,000 by 2010. Employment at Inland Steel peaked at 25,000 in 1969, and successive layoffs over the next 30 years were devastating to the community. By 1998, only 9,000 were employed at Inland Steel. Inland Steel was acquired by ISPIT International in 1998. Both the Indiana Harbor Mill and Youngstown Steel Mill were absorbed and merged by ArcelorMittal in 2004, and subsequently sold to Cleveland Cliffs in 2020. The Indiana Harbor Public Library and Marktown Historic District are listed in the National Register of Historic Places. In 2009, parts of East Chicago were discovered to have toxic lead and arsenic contamination, designated the USS Lead Superfund site. The site is divided into 3 zones with public housing and residential properties. Residents' decades-long concerns about lead contamination were confirmed, and long concerns about lead contamination were confirmed in 2016 via EPA testing, especially affecting over 270 families in the West Calumet housing complex. As governor of Indiana, Mike Pence declined to declare the Superfund site a state emergency, his successor, Governor Eric Holcomb, has issued Executive Order 17-13 declaring a disaster emergency in East Chicago. Geography. According to the 2010 census, East Chicago has a total area of 16-155 square miles, or 41.84 kilometers squared, of which 14.9 square miles, 36.49 kilometers squared, or 87.22% is land, and 2.065 square miles, or 5.35 kilometers squared, or 12.78% is water. Transportation. The nearest commercial airport to East Chicago is the Gary/Chicago International Airport in neighboring Gary, but it does not have any scheduled passenger service. The closest commercial airport with scheduled passenger service is Chicago Midway Airport. The South Shore Line has a station in East Chicago. The Wolverine at Hammond Whiting Station, 5.5 miles to the northwest, is the nearest Amtrak service. US 12 and US 20 go through the Indiana Harbor and East Chicago sections of the city, respectively, before joining up on both sides. Indiana State Road 912, the Klein Avenue Expressway, connects East Chicago with the Indiana Toll Road and Boardman Expressway and serves the casino and steel mills on the lakefront. Bus transit. The city operates a free bus service known as East Chicago Transit. It features 3 routes: Crosstown, West Calumet, and Griffith Plaza. GPRT Route R1 stops in East Chicago en route from Hammond to Gary. Pace operates Route 892, a special work shuttle between Gary, East Chicago, and UPS Hodgkins facility. His schedule coincides with UPS workers' shifts. The route is operated in cooperation with UPS, which partially funds its operations. Neighborhoods. Indiana Harbor, or East Chicago, North Harbor, Sunnyside, New Edition, Washington Park, Prairie Park, and Marktown. East Chicago, North Side, South Side, Roxana, and Calumet. Education. School City of East Chicago serves all of the city. All residents are zoned to East Chicago Central High School. Ivy Tech Community College. Industry. East Chicago is home to the following business and industry: Cleveland Cliffs, Indiana Harbor Works, the largest steel mill in the USA. Indiana Harbor Works comprises East Mill, originally Inland Steel, and West Mill, owned for most of its life by Youngstown Sheet and Tube, both acquired and merged by ArcelorMittal. U.S. Steel's East Chicago Tin, a steel finishing faculty part of Gary Works, the Indiana Harbor and Ship Canal Complex. For 105 years, East Chicago was home to the Inland Steel Company from 1893 through 1998. The Showboat Casino opened in 1997 with about 900 employees. Other large employers include Amoco Oil Company, Union Tank Car, American Steel Foundries, USG Corp., and St. Catherine Hospital. Notable people: Gonzalo P. Curiel, U.S. District Court Judge; Earl Harris, of Indiana State Legislator; William C. Kavanaugh, Wisconsin State Assemblyman; Vincent Rose, Secret Service Agent; Jerome Repa, Indiana lawyer and politician; Theodore L. Sindek, 36th Indiana Attorney General; Richard Williams, diplomat, author, first U.S. ambassador to Mongolia. Military: Emilio A. de la Garza, Jr., U.S. Marine Corps, Medal of Honor recipient, Vietnam War. Alexander Vorasiu, U.S. Navy Cross, leading flying ace during World War II. Movies and TV: Leslie Edgley, novelist, playwright, radio dramatist, and screenwriter. John Hubbard, actor. Betsy Palmer, actress and television personality. Frank Reynolds, ABC television news personality. Steve Tissick, Academy Award-winning screenwriter. Music: Youngin Ace, a rapper. Catfish Keith, blues singer, songwriter, and slide guitarist. Mighty Mo Rogers, blues musician, songwriter, and record producer. Sports: Bob Anderson, Major League Baseball player. Jim Bradley, professional basketball player. Junior Bridgman, NBA player for Milwaukee Bucks and businessman, jersey number retired by Bucks. Larry Fritz, Major League Baseball player. Jim Hicks, Major League Baseball player. Danny Lazar, Major League Baseball pitcher. Kenny Lofton, Major League Baseball player, 6-time All-Star, 4-time Gold Glove winner. Angel Manfredi, professional boxer / title holder. Monica Maxwell, professional basketball player. Etwan Moore, professional basketball player. Ili Owana, football player and manager who represented and coached Romania national football team. Frank Patrick, professional football player. Stan Perzanowski, MLB pitcher. Bridget Pettis, professional basketball player and coach. Greg Popovich, coach of San Antonio Spurs, 5-time NBA champion, 3-time NBA coach of the year. Jason Repko, Major League Baseball outfielder for Boston Red Sox and Los Angeles Dodgers. Kawan Short, Carolina Panthers professional football player. Matt Smith, sports radio personality. Ron Smith, NFL player. Tim Stoddard, Major League Baseball pitcher and college basketball player. Forward for North Carolina State's 1974 NCAA basketball champions. Pete Trigovich played on 1971 Washington High School Indiana State championship team with Junior Bridgman, and Tim Stoddard went on to play for legendary coach John Wooden at UCLA, winning 3 NCAA championship rings. Ray Wateka, assistant coach to Vince Lombardi and NFL champion Green Bay Packers. Other: Eric Flint, speculative fiction author. Andrew Mazda, mathematician. Cliff Raven, tattoo artist. David Albin Zwick Sidor, American Nicaraguan Roman Catholic bishop. Miguel Torres, mixed martial artist. Warren W. Wierson, theologian. Coordinates: 41 degrees 38:20 north, 87 degrees 27:34 west. Mayor Anthony Copeland. City Council members: Brenda J. Walker, Grand Calumet River, Indiana Harbor and Ship Canal, Lake Michigan, Indiana Harbor Peninsula.